Tesla taking the biggest hit, down 6%. That's not the only potential headache for Elon Musk. Leaders in Canada are going after his ventures specifically.
Tesla just continues to disappoint. Is this all because of Elon Musk's other activities, or have the sort of, first adopters already filled their garages?
This wasn't a crash, it was an ambush, and the trap was set years ago. Tesla didn't stumble. It was taken out, targeted by foreign governments, betrayed by allies, and gutted by a trade war its CEO never saw coming. $135 billion vanished. Factories froze. Protesters took the streets. This isn't just about electric vehicles. It's the moment America's most powerful tech brand got played like a pawn and lost. So how did Canada and Europe blindside Elon Musk? Why did Wall Street bail first? And what happens when the company that redefined the future gets locked out of it entirely? EU and Canada's revenge plot. In the weeks following the tariff war's ignition, two of America's closest allies, Canada and the European Union, responded with precision. And they didn't just retaliate against America as a whole, they aimed their firepower directly at Tesla. This wasn't economic self-defense. It was a calculated strike designed to take down a symbol. Canada had long been one of Tesla's most loyal overseas markets, second only to the United States. But as tensions escalated, the Canadian government made an unprecedented move. They eliminated Tesla from the list of electric vehicles eligible for federal rebates. Practically overnight, Tesla vehicles became several $1,000s more expensive for Canadian consumers. That single policy wiped out the bulk of Tesla's competitive advantage in the country. Then came the second blow. 43 million Canadian dollars in rebate payments that had been promised to dealerships were frozen, under the guise of financial audit concerns. In parallel, the European Union was quietly preparing its own kill shot. New tariffs were introduced specifically on American-made electric vehicles, pushing Tesla's pricing beyond reach in countries like Germany, France, and Italy. Worse still, several EU nations announced they would no longer include Tesla in their national EV subsidy programs. Instead, they shifted financial incentives toward European automakers, Volkswagen, Renault, Stellantis. The message was unmistakable: support local, punish Musk. But the retaliation didn't stop at money. It became personal. Public statements from European ministers made it clear that Elon Musk's close alignment with President Trump had become a political liability. They framed Tesla as a symbol of American aggression, a company that benefited from global trade, but stood silent while Washington torched relationships. Tesla was no longer just a business, it was a diplomatic casualty. Within a single fiscal quarter, Tesla's international sales in Europe and Canada dropped by nearly 40%. Shipping contracts were canceled. Overseas offices began furloughing staff. And for the first time since its meteoric rise, Tesla found itself locked out of the very markets it once called essential to future growth. And what Canada did next blindsided Musk completely. The consumer rebellion Tesla never expected. While international retaliation gutted Tesla's ability to sell abroad, a new and far more intimate crisis was unfolding at home. The American consumer, once the beating heart of Tesla's rise, began to turn against the company. And it didn't start with a bang. It started with a whisper. At first, it was social media murmurs, tweets calling for boycotts, Reddit threads mocking price hikes, viral videos questioning Elon Musk's increasingly erratic behavior. But by the second week of April, those whispers had turned into roars. Protests began to appear outside Tesla dealerships in key swing states like Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Placards read, "We voted for you, not for this." Tesla employees at service centers found themselves fielding verbal abuse from former fans. The brand was unraveling in real time. What made this rebellion so dangerous was that it wasn't just coming from one side. Progressives, who once hailed Tesla as a climate hero, were furious about Elon Musk's public closeness to President Trump and the administration's far-right policies. On the other end, working-class families who had once dreamed of owning a Tesla now found the vehicles financially out of reach, thanks to the rising prices caused by the very tariffs Musk had refused to denounce. The backlash grew louder and more visual. Videos began circulating of frustrated owners smashing their own Teslas in parking lots. One clip, showing a man spray painting "Traitor" across the side of his Model Y, racked up millions of views. The message was clear. Tesla no longer represented the future. It represented betrayal. Tesla's U.S. market share dropped by 22% in just one quarter. Dealerships reported inventory stagnation, even as they slashed prices. In rural areas, showrooms began laying off staff. The same vehicles that once symbolized environmental hope and cutting-edge tech were now viewed as overpriced symbols of political arrogance. But the real explosion came from Tesla's biggest liability, Elon Musk himself. We did the research so you wouldn't have to. Just the truth they tried to bury. Hit subscribe. We're just getting started. Elon's public meltdown and media spiral. As the walls closed in around Tesla, all eyes turned to Elon Musk. This was his company, his vision, his empire. The world waited for calm, for leadership, for reassurance. What they got instead was chaos. Musk took to social media with a vengeance. Instead of calming shareholders or reassuring consumers, he lashed out, mocking government regulators, blaming foreign economic sabotage, and openly insulting Canadian and European leaders. He appeared on late-night shows and financial podcasts with a kind of manic defiance, delivering lines like, "If you don't like the volatility, don't buy Tesla." That soundbite alone triggered a double-digit drop in the company's stock price. Institutional investors watched in horror. Pension funds, hedge fund managers, and sovereign wealth portfolios that had trusted Musk with their billions suddenly saw him as a liability. Behind closed doors, calls were made, and shares began to be sold off in quiet, massive waves. The media seized on every tweet, every quote, every appearance, portraying Musk not as a genius under siege, but as a CEO unraveling under pressure. And as Musk ranted, joked, and sparred online, Tesla's internal leadership began to fracture. Executives distanced themselves. Spokespeople struggled to contain the fallout. The brand that once stood for clean energy and brilliance now stood for volatility and unpredictability. And while Musk lashed out, Tesla's foundation began to fracture. The Supplier Rebellion. Tesla was never truly self-contained. For all its talk of vertical integration, the company was always supported by a delicate global ecosystem of suppliers, contractors, and logistics partners. From lithium in Canada to semiconductors in Germany, Tesla's entire production model depended on just-in-time coordination and international goodwill. But goodwill evaporates fast when politics catch fire. The first cracks came from Canada. In retaliation for American tariffs, the Canadian government imposed export fees on raw materials crucial to Tesla's battery production. Companies that had supplied Tesla for years, some since the Model S era, suddenly hiked prices or demanded new terms. One battery material supplier simply canceled its contract altogether, citing political instability and currency risk. That cancellation sent a chilling message to the rest of the industry. If Canada could walk away, so could everyone else. In Europe, Tesla's relationships soured even faster. Suppliers in France and Germany had already been rattled by Elon Musk's public statements attacking EU trade officials. But after Canada's move, those suppliers began demanding full payment in advance. Some even refused to ship products until Musk issued public apologies. He didn't. Instead, he doubled down on defiance. That choice cost Tesla millions. By mid-April, dozens of suppliers had quietly shifted business to competitors. Volkswagen, Renault, Stellantis, companies seen as safer, more stable partners. Tesla became a red flag in boardrooms. Contracts that once came with handshake extensions were now buried in legal clauses and risk assessments. Back in the United States, Tesla's supply chain team was in crisis mode. They couldn't secure parts, couldn't promise delivery dates, and couldn't build fast enough to make up for the lost time. Costs ballooned. Assembly lines stalled. Musk ordered emergency meetings, but the situation was beyond salvaging. Tesla's leadership tried to spin the problem as temporary. In press releases, they blamed regional disruptions and temporary sourcing delays. But the truth was more brutal. Tesla's allies had become its enemies. And with every contract broken, every shipment delayed, and every component pulled, the company inched closer to total collapse. And that's when Volkswagen finally pulled the plug. Volkswagen's strategic takeover. The Germans weren't surprised by Tesla's collapse. They had been preparing for it. For years, Volkswagen had been investing quietly, but aggressively, in electric vehicle infrastructure, battery supply chains, and platform standardization. While Tesla was capturing headlines, Volkswagen was capturing Europe. When Tesla fell, Volkswagen moved quickly. Subsidies in Germany, France, and Italy were restructured to favor local manufacturers. European consumers, already uneasy about Musk's politics, had a viable alternative, one that was cheaper, more stable, and backed by familiar names. Volkswagen's pricing strategy was ruthless. Thanks to its modular electric vehicle platform, it could offer hatchbacks, sedans, and sport utility vehicles at a fraction of Tesla's cost. And unlike Tesla, Volkswagen wasn't losing money on every unit. Their scale and supplier control made them lean, efficient, nationally aligned. And they made sure everyone knew it. Marketing campaigns flooded social media. European-made, globally respected. In France, TV ads featured families choosing Volkswagen over Tesla because stability matters. In Germany, journalists ran op-eds praising Volkswagen for keeping jobs local, while Tesla outsourced chaos. By June, Volkswagen had overtaken Tesla as the #1 electric vehicle brand in Europe. Dealerships couldn't keep stock on the lot. Government contracts, once earmarked for Tesla, were handed to Volkswagen. And yet, even as Tesla lost Europe, a more dangerous competitor was about to strike. Because across the world, Tesla's next competitor didn't just want customers, it wanted the throne. BYD's global Coupe. While Tesla was busy hemorrhaging market share in the West, another player was rising quietly and without mercy. BYD, the Chinese electric vehicle giant that had long been dismissed as a regional brand, began executing a playbook that looked suspiciously like Tesla's original blueprint, only better. Vertically integrated, politically protected, and globally ambitious, BYD was not just looking to compete, it was looking to dominate. And by the time Tesla realized what was happening, BYD had already seized territory that Musk could no longer afford to defend. In Asia, BYD moved fast. While Tesla wrestled with soaring tariffs and anti-American sentiment, BYD filled the void with reliable, affordable electric vehicles tailored for developing economies. In India, Vietnam, and Thailand, governments desperate to electrify their fleets turned to the company that could deliver at scale and at speed. Tesla's pricing structure, still built around premium models, looked absurd in comparison. Where Tesla offered one vehicle, BYD offered 4. Where Tesla hesitated, BYD shipped. Africa followed next. For years, Musk had touted expansion plans on the continent, but delivered nothing. Meanwhile, BYD signed multi-billion-dollar infrastructure deals with Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria. Charging stations, battery plants, government fleet contracts. They offered not just cars, but entire ecosystems. BYD didn't ask countries to adapt to them. They adapted to the country. Tesla couldn't even get past customs. But the real shock came in Latin America. Argentina, Brazil, and Chile had been fertile ground for Tesla's solar energy ambitions. Until the trade wars hit, American imports became politically toxic, and Chinese alternatives suddenly looked smarter. BYD swooped in. Within weeks, they were outcompeting Tesla not just on cost, but on access. While Elon Musk tried to reassure shareholders that Tesla would weather the storm, BYD was already picking up the pieces. How did they pull this off? It wasn't magic, it was structure. BYD had long controlled its own battery supply chain, from lithium mines to final assembly. They didn't need third-party cobalt from Canada. They didn't need political goodwill in Europe. They didn't even need subsidies to sell at competitive prices. While Tesla's supply chain resembled a tangled web of international risk, BYD's resembled a fortress. And unlike Musk, BYD's leadership never made themselves the story. While Elon ranted on social media, Wang Chuanfu, the founder of BYD, stayed quiet, focused, and strategic. Investors noticed, governments noticed, consumers noticed. And within a span of just 3 months, BYD had converted Tesla's collapse into their own coronation. BYD hadn't just beaten Tesla on performance or pricing. They had erased Tesla from the global conversation. Elon Musk built the electric vehicle dream. BYD simply cashed it in. But Elon Musk's most painful betrayal came from the world. The world removes Tesla. What began as a dip in quarterly profits had now become something darker, a global erasure. Tesla, once synonymous with innovation, was being written out of the story, not just in markets or media, but in policy, infrastructure, and national strategy. In Europe, governments that once competed to lure Tesla factories were now pulling out their chargers. Public EV incentives that had once favored Tesla were now tied to European brands or open platform solutions. Germany and France led the charge, but others followed quickly. In some cities, Tesla-branded charging stations were dismantled and replaced with universal connectors. In others, Tesla's name was quietly removed from future development plans. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It was clinical. In Canada, infrastructure budgets were rewritten. Grants for EV expansion excluded any company under investigation for international supply chain instability, a thinly veiled reference to Tesla. Provinces like Ontario and Quebec redirected funds to smaller domestic startups and European partnerships. In Latin America, Tesla's solar ambitions were rolled back. Local contractors terminated agreements. Politicians cited reputational risk. In Asia, India's government declined Tesla's long-awaited manufacturing proposal, citing BYD's stronger delivery track record. Even in the United States, major municipal fleet contracts began to favor Ford, Rivian, or foreign-backed EV fleets. Tesla wasn't just out of favor, it was being deleted. What changed? Trust. Tesla no longer inspired confidence, not in regulators, not in city planners, not in consumers. Where once Elon Musk was seen as a disruptor, he was now viewed as a liability. And in a world shifting rapidly toward electrification, no country could afford to bet its future on instability. Tesla has become the Nokia of electric vehicles, pioneering, revolutionary, and ultimately irrelevant. And that global humiliation sparked something even more dangerous, a worker-led revolt, the labor revolt that shook America. They built his dream. Now they're burning it down. In the factories of Fremont, California, and Austin, Texas, the mood shifted from frustration to fury. Tesla workers, once the proud soldiers of Elon Musk's industrial revolution, now saw themselves as the last ones holding a broken empire together. Over time, hours vanished. Stock options became worthless. Benefits were quietly trimmed. The message was loud and clear. Sacrifice more, earn less. But the workers were done sacrificing. It started with informal walkouts, quiet protests during lunch breaks or unscheduled absences. Then came the picket lines. Then came the strikes. From Ohio to Nevada, Tesla's workforce erupted in organized resistance. Labor unions, long pushed to the margins by Musk's aggressive anti-union tactics, finally had an opening, and they seized it with everything they had. Rallies formed outside dealerships. Chants of, "We built this, he broke it," echoed across industrial zones. Workers who had once praised Musk for his boldness now called him a billionaire parasite who gambled their futures on political ego and lost. And it wasn't just Tesla employees joining the cause. Auto workers from Ford, GM, and Rivian showed solidarity. What began as a company crisis was becoming a class war. The media caught on quickly. Viral videos showed once loyal Tesla mechanics burning their uniforms. Former engineers spoke to news outlets, exposing years of ignored complaints and financial manipulation. In congressional hearings, labor leaders testified that Musk had weaponized nationalism to crush American labor. Inside Tesla's executive suite, panic grew. Production halts spread. Deliveries missed targets. Wall Street, already skittish, saw red. But there was no messaging campaign strong enough to stop it. The workforce had turned, and they weren't asking for a seat at the table. They were flipping it over. But the damage didn't stop at Tesla. It triggered a financial catastrophe. How Tesla's collapse shattered the US economy. It began with one stock, one company, one name, Tesla. And within weeks, it turned into something far more terrifying, a systemic implosion that sent shockwaves through every corner of the American economy. For most Americans, Tesla wasn't just another automaker. It was a symbol of national pride, the crown jewel of Silicon Valley. The proof that American innovation could still lead the future. But when Tesla collapsed, it took more than just electric vehicles with it. It took trust, capital, and stability. The immediate damage was brutally clear. When Tesla lost more than $135 billion in market value, It didn't just hurt Elon Musk. It crushed retirement accounts, mutual funds, and institutional investors that had tied their futures to the company's rise. Tesla stock had become a staple in countless portfolios, from government pension funds to 401 plans across the country. When that value evaporated, so did the savings of millions. By the end of March in the year 2025, financial advisors across the United States were fielding panicked calls from retirees and working families alike. Their wealth was gone, and the bleeding had only just begun. The broader indices followed like dominoes. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dipped sharply. The S&P 500 suffered its worst quarterly performance in more than a decade. Tesla's implosion triggered a cascade of sell-offs across the tech sector. Companies that once relied on Tesla's momentum to justify lofty valuations suddenly found themselves exposed. Investors began to question everything. Was this the first domino or just the most visible one? Banks started tightening credit lines. Lending dried up. Startups that had once counted on Tesla's ecosystem, battery suppliers, software integrators, charging infrastructure companies were now scrambling to stay afloat. Creditors demanded collateral. Underwriters reevaluated risk. And the real estate market, already straining under high interest rates and inflation, felt a second punch as consumer confidence collapsed. In cities like Austin, Fremont, and Reno, where Tesla had driven massive job growth, housing prices began to fall. Layoffs at Tesla quickly rippled outward, gutting local economies dependent on factory wages, contractor spending, and supplier activity. It didn't take long for the labor market to feel it. Job openings vanished. Manufacturing hubs slowed production. Unemployment claims rose in factory-rich counties, states that had lured Tesla with massive subsidies. California, Texas, and Nevada suddenly found themselves holding the bill for a broken promise. Lawmakers who once praised Musk as a job creator now faced angry constituents demanding answers. In many ways, Tesla had become too big to fail, but fail it did. This wasn't just a crash, it was a reckoning. A single company's collapse revealed how deeply the American economy had been built around speculation, image, and the cult of technological celebrity. It wasn't just the numbers that fell, it was the illusion that the future was secured, that one man's vision could defy gravity, that American exceptionalism would always pull through. And as the economy burned, the world rewrote the rules of trade. The global trade fallout, while Wall Street trembled and Washington scrambled. Something far more consequential was happening outside U.S. borders. Countries around the world were no longer waiting for the United States to recover. They were cutting it out of the future. It started quietly, meetings behind closed doors in Ottawa, Berlin, and Tokyo. But within weeks, those meetings turned into policies. Canada, once the United States' most reliable trading partner, unveiled a sweeping new trade deal with the European Union and South Korea. The agreement bypassed American manufacturers entirely. The European Union followed suit, finalizing electric vehicle subsidy reform that excluded US-made products altogether. In Latin America, governments began shifting procurement contracts for electric bus fleets and clean energy systems from US firms to Chinese and European manufacturers. Brazil signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with BYD. Argentina rewrote its auto import rules to favor European battery platforms. In Asia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Indonesia expanded strategic partnerships with Chinese firms, locking the United States out of rare earth and battery recycling infrastructure for the next decade. The global message was unmistakable. America had become unreliable. Trade wars, tariff threats, and unpredictable political swings had made the United States a high-risk partner. Even traditional allies were no longer willing to gamble their economies on the whims of Washington. Tesla had once been the proof that America could still lead the Green Revolution. Now it had become the example of how quickly that leadership could vanish, and the world wasn't interested in nostalgia. It was building something new, without the United States. Charging networks in Europe adopted universal standards. Chinese manufacturers formed alliances with African nations to control mineral exports. Canada signed exclusive multi-year supply deals with South Korean and European car makers. Global clean tech infrastructure was being hardwired to exclude US firms. The very roads of the future, literal and political, were now being paved without American concrete. And with every door closing, Washington faced an impossible choice. And by the time America chooses, the world may have already moved on without it. Elon's worst nightmare: the death of a symbol. Tesla didn't just sell electric vehicles. It sold belief. Belief in innovation. Belief in disruption. Belief in one man's vision of the future. For nearly 2 decades, Elon Musk was treated as a prophet, a maverick who defied the system, broke the rules, and still won. He built rockets. He made cars that drove themselves. He took on big oil, Wall Street, and the establishment. But in the end, it wasn't his enemies that brought him down. It was the very system he thought he could control. The final days of Tesla weren't filled with defiance. They were filled with silence. Shareholders walked away. Workers went on strike. The stock lost more than 60% of its value. Government incentives disappeared. And Musk, once hailed as the voice of the future, became a meme of the past. News outlets stopped covering Tesla as a company. They covered it as a cautionary tale. Business schools used its downfall as a case study in overreach. Politicians distanced themselves from Musk. Tech leaders whispered about what went wrong. And former fans, once loyal to the brand, scrubbed Tesla logos from their bumpers. In the end, there was no big scandal, no criminal indictment, no courtroom drama. Just absence. The absence of momentum. The absence of confidence. The absence of meaning. Tesla faded, not because it lost its spark, but because the world stopped believing in it. This wasn't a collapse. It was an evaporation. The dream didn't explode. It dissolved. And now, it's too late to stop the bleeding. Let us know your thoughts in the comment below. And if this collapse caught you off guard, imagine what's coming next. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the stories no one else is telling. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.